This video is brought to you by my new book, Cryptid and Other Stories of the Bizarre and Terrifying. If you're looking for something to give you some nightmares before bed, then feel free to check out the links in the description. Biomutant is a game that I have had on my radar since it was announced. I was primarily drawn to its unique art direction and how it handled character creation in conjunction with the player character's appearance. It also helped it was being published by THQ Nordic. The guy's best known for reviving my favourite properties from high school in collaboration with a new studio, Experiment 101. Then I lucked out and got to try out a demo at PAX one year, and I was immediately sold on it. Bright colours, high energy hack and slash combat with gunplay, and a boss battle that was one part platforming challenge and one part hacking and slashing. I'd come to expect fried gold thanks to that experience. Now I finally got my hands on the full game and I do not know what happened because the final version is less fried gold and more fried chicken. It's still good, but like a real life fried chicken, it has issues that get all over your hands that can leave you annoyed, especially if you didn't get the moist towelette to deal with the grease and now your hands are all greasy.
Yes, that's the way. No arguing with that.
I'll be upfront, storytelling is not this game's biggest strength, thanks largely due to its open-ended nature and rather rickety presentation. The narrative sees our character return from a self-imposed exile. They are looking for revenge against a creature called Lupa Lupin for killing our family, as well as to decide the fate of the native tribes that fractured thanks to our mother's death, and ultimately determine the fate of the world by whether or not the Tree of Life should survive or finally perish. This is all well and good, but thanks to how open-ended the game can be, there isn't a lot of room for character development, relationships, or anything in the way of interesting arcs beyond the player character, since you are free to basically go anywhere and interact with different elements of the story as you please in almost any order, or even ignore some. If you want, you don't even have to get involved with the tribes at all and just focus on the Tree of Life, so you don't really get much in the way of substantive character development or interactions, but it does make an effort to at least have some emotional impact, such as with the boss fight where we confront Lupa Lupin, or when we have flashbacks to our character's childhood. Our actions in those sequences are reflected in the present, but these fall short thanks to the narrative focus and the cinematics that can run the gamut from being okay to just being stiff. A great example is when I got my hands on the banana katana my character made as part of the tutorial in a flashback. That should have been something that moved me or pulled me into my character's struggle between the light and the dark, but no. Instead, all I could really think was, huh, neat. But while the story may be lacking, the world of Biomutant is not. It's a unique open world full of colour and charm with an aesthetic that's best described as Eurotrash meets Asia junk. In fact, most of the fun I had with the game was when I was just wandering around, exploring it organically, running into side quests, or learning more about this world and its history. Hell, this is a world where humanity's pollution destroyed the world as we knew it, forcing us to leave and letting the resulting new creatures that evolved thanks to our influence to inherit it. And while we don't get much in the way of character development, the characters in the game are unique and as colourful as the world itself, with varied appearances and personalities that can make them fun to interact with when they give you a quest, but they can get tiresome thanks to one glaring issue: the narrator. See, all the characters speak in a cartoonish gibberish language, and what they say is translated by a light-hearted narrator. The actor does a great job at his performance, and he does suit the game's tone. The issue is that he can lay it on a little too much and pops up too frequently. Both when you're talking to someone or just doing something random, he'll suddenly just pipe in again and again, so I understand this will get on some people's nerves. It didn't get on mine personally, but that's just me. Hell, he's been complained about so much that the developers had to include an option to reduce his frequency or just mute him completely. That's how annoying some people have found him. The gameplay though is easily Biomutant's biggest strength, with combat and crafting taking the crown as twin kings. The combat is a mix of chain together hack and slash combos with some loose gunplay mixed in. There's a good variety of weapons to use, and what you're using alongside whether or not you're dual wielding determine what special attacks you can unleash. You've also got access to unique special abilities, some of which are actually locked off based on moral alignment, so the game even takes a little influence from Knights of the Old Republic in that regard, something I'm actually kinda happy to see. And these abilities can include things from shooting fireballs to vomiting poison. These act as nice little wildcards that can give you a real edge when things are getting tough, and they do fit right in with the hacking, the slashing, and of course, the shooting. Throw in with all of that some over-the-top presentation inspired by comics and wuxia films, and the end result is absolute balls of fun. Most of the time. Usually everything in the combat does click together, but there are times where it just can feel kind of off. It's hard to describe. It's almost like the game isn't receiving your commands properly, and when this happens, the combat can feel awkward. The crafting system, on the other hand, is sublime, and it's lifted right out of Spiders and their RPGs. Now, I love how those guys implement those types of systems. Here, you can build not only armor and weapon mods to modify your equipment, but you can also craft brand new weapons, and if you found the components, you can make some really silly looking but powerful ones. But what I love are the add-ons. When you make these, they don't just change your weapon stats or your armor stats. These are physical cosmetic changes to your weapons and armor that you can see actively in the game. This makes improving your gear so much more rewarding to do, and it's fun to watch your character go from looking like an Asian backpacker in Sweden to an Asian backpacker in Sweden who kinda went overboard at the merch booth at a black metal show. Character creation is another area where the game also shines. Essentially, our characters' attributes are reflected in their bodily appearance. If they're stronger at the expense of speed, then they'll be larger and bulkier, but if fast at the expense of strength, then the character is going to be small and dwarfish. This comes after selecting and modifying a breed that acts as base reference for certain stats. Now, this is a great idea, and I'd love to see more games try something like this. However, it doesn't affect all stats, and the ones it doesn't seem to have almost no practical use in game. I say this because the game does have skill checks like any RPG should, but they don't work how you'd expect. They usually take the form of switch puzzles of all things, where you have limited moves to get it right. If you fail, you take some damage, and then you're free to try again and again. So it feels like the relating stat doesn't really have an impact, and that there's no real consequence for failing the skill check other than just wait till your character heals up or use a healing item, then try again. But perhaps a better example would be the charisma stat. You need high charisma to get good deals with vendors, but during my time with the game, I bought almost nothing. Instead, I got by fine with supplies and weapons I either just found in the world or crafted myself. So eventually I realized there was no reason for me to put upgrades into it and just ignored it, instead kept improving my character's critical hit chance, strength, and base health.
Says the Tree of Life is going so fast. You need to do anything you can to save it.
The only other thing I feel worth bringing up are the boss fights against the World Eaters. These are some of the best parts of the game. The reason is because they're not just pure fights, but also do something unique that's usually tied to a vehicle you had to get in working order first. Each area they're in requires you to fix up and potentially upgrade a unique mount to not only fight, but reach them. When you fight the World Eaters, or pups as they're called, they come in phases where you have to use the vehicle against them. With the two I went up against, I had to use a mech to get around and eat his heft, while the other I had to use a jet ski to fling water mines at it to get it onto the land. These are then followed by either platforming or more straightforward combat, and you know what? That's great! The diversity on offer with these makes these fights real standouts that reminded me of the fried gold I saw with the demo, with the drastically changing nature keeping you on your toes because you just don't know what you're going to have to do next. What's more is that they make the other boss fights in the game against the leaders of the other tribes and Looper Lupin feel more humdrum in comparison, hence why they stuck out to me more. When it's all said and done, Biomutant is an ambitious title from a studio that clearly had a lot of love and passion behind it. But ambition doesn't equate to success, and love doesn't get chicken grease off your fingers. But despite its faults, there is a lot to enjoy about it, and it's nice to see a new IP come along and genuinely try new things, rather than just try and copy what the big boys are doing. Like Trails of Cold Steel, I can still see myself playing it off and on for a while after this review, and more than anything, I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel or an expansion, if only to have another good reason to see more of the strange, koala-infested world the Swedes at Experiment 101 came up with. Alright Alright, hey, thanks for checking out this review. I really do appreciate it. If you really enjoyed it, and I mean really, really enjoyed it, then feel free to hit the like and subscribe button. That would really help me and the channel out. As for the next game review, I haven't really decided what I'm going to review next. I'm thinking I might do a showcase, if only to work through some of the games in my backlog. You know, take a look at some stuff like the Devil May Cry 4 remaster, Nier Automata, or Salt and Sanctuary, or even an indie shooter I found called Eternal Blood. As for the movie reviews though, honestly, I do not know what I'm doing with those anymore. I just lost my mojo, and I may get back into them sooner than later, or later than sooner, most likely the latter than the former, but for now, they're entirely up in the air at the moment. Either way, I've got more gaming stuff in the pipeline, so like always, please stick around.